Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Tim Petrovic. Thank you for the opportunity to delegate this evening. I want to speak to the process of replacing the two trustees on the Waterloo Region District School Board. As trustees, you have a fiduciary responsibility for managing the funds and assets of the WRDSB. With that in mind, I won't spend a lot of time discussing what is undoubtedly the most democratic option, which is a by-election. From what has been shared here before, it appears that a by-election could cost in the neighborhood of $500,000. This board has a budget for 2022-2023 of over $800 million, and while surely savings can be found somewhere, we don't need to go down this path. Democracy isn't cheap, but there is also a simple solution to the simple problem of board vacancies. As local media personality Mike Farwell put it in a Waterloo Chronicle op-ed on May 27th, there is a comfortable middle road for the public board here, if only it chooses to take it. In the fall of 2022, an election put each one of you trustees in this room. While some here may share the sentiments of our Prime Minister when he expressed admiration of China's basic dictatorship as a vehicle for getting things done, it is my position that most stakeholders of the WRDSB continue to believe that a democratic society is the most fair and equitable way of advancing our common interests. The next eligible trustee candidate from the very recent election should be appointed to the board. In each municipality of Waterloo Region, the top 3 or 4 candidates were voted in as trustees. Selecting the next eligible candidate on the list is the only logical, cost-effective solution that also retains democratic principles. The idea of appointing a committee to design a secretive selection process to handpick 2 trustee replacements is what a Politburo does and is the polar opposite of democracy. This circumvents democratic process and only strengthens to strengthen the view of many that this board has a narrow field of view and has Marxist leanings that they wish to bring to fruition. I have reviewed the report to the Committee of the Whole on the proposed trustee appointment process, and I am appalled, though also not surprised. In summary, the vacant trustee positions will be available to any Waterloo Region resident. There will then be applications and interviews, all of this without the public's access. From these applicants, the 2 trustee positions will be selected by secret ballot. How about that for transparency? We all know that the 2 selected positions will share the mentality of the current board majority and government-run education groupthink, because the majority is allowed to dominate if it fits the agenda of the current board. So much for minority voices at the table. One of the stated reasons for avoiding a by-election because of these vacancies was the cost. Yet in this report, costs are alluded to, such as newspaper ads to promote this sham, yet no number is given as to what this would cost. It would certainly be more than 0. There are also costs associated with the development of a communication strategy, and who knows, there may even be additional costs for legal fees. While this proposed process is not as costly as a by-election, it most certainly is more expensive than the streamlined, fair, and equitable approach of appointing the next eligible candidate from the most recent election. In fact, the board would be failing in their fiduciary duty not to do so. Another casualty with this process is democracy, because the proposed appointment process only reflects the will of the school board, not of the public. The good news is it is not too late to correct this mistake. Yes, there is a panel of 3 who have put forth a plan, but rather than doing an inside job, give democracy a chance. The panel can withdraw the report and suggest, as I have, that the next eligible candidate from the last election is appointed. This would be Wendy Woodall in Waterloo-Wilmot and Jen Burkholder in Wellesley-Woolwich. If for some reason those candidates aren't eligible or available, then move on to the next runner-up. The candidates from the last election all cared enough to take time from their busy lives to campaign. It is hardly an equitable solution to appoint someone who couldn't even bother to spend the resources of time and money on a campaign and undergo the accompanying public scrutiny. I am certain that all of you trustees here understand what that is like. We ended up with a diverse and inclusive board this term by letting democracy work its messy magic. There is no need to overrule democracy now and simply appoint someone by a 6-3 vote, because the appointee shares the ideological leanings of the majority. All of us here know, whether we are willing to admit it or not, that this is what this attempt at circumventing democracy is about. By the way, if anyone wants to make a bet that the board vote to appoint two random trustees that no member of the public voted for won't be 6-3, I'm happy to do so. It is also surprising to many constituents, including myself, that there is no official succession plan in place to fill board vacancies and to avoid the appearance of incompetence and cronyism. Yes, the ministry gives the board leeway to decide how to fill vacancies, and yet the board finds itself in a quagmire because it has failed to act. An official succession plan should be on the agenda for a future meeting, and I would suggest the clear democratic process rather than a murky, opaque one, which is being attempted now. There have been arguments made on both sides that the board did it one way in 2020 and another way in 2017 and a different way in the 1980s. What those arguments do is drive home the point that the lack of a clearly defined succession plan is a problem. There is a way out of this self-induced mess. According to Robert's rules, you could reconsider your decision to proceed with an undemocratic process to replace the vacant trustee positions. According to Robert's rules, a trustee from the prevailing side who voted in favor of the original motion could serve a notice of reconsideration to reverse the undemocratic selection process. I will close with this. If the WRDSB ignores democracy and carries on with their subjective and secretive trustee selection process, it will only serve to strengthen the role of this board as the greatest recruiting tool for alternative education in Waterloo Region. Thank you.
Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Trustee Watson, question of clarification?
I don't have a question of clarification. Did you want to? Okay.
Trustee Watson? No?
No, excuse me.
Sorry, Trustee Watson, do you have a question of
I'll
clarification?
defer to Trustee Ramsey.
Okay. You can't defer, but he can raise his hand and I can call on him. Okay, thank you. So you don't have a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Ramsey, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to move that we place the delegation's request on the agenda with respect to point that he was making around the reconsideration. So I'm just asking for it to be placed on the agenda. I understand what the rules are with respect to it being placed. So I'm moving that we put it on the agenda to consider.
Put it on the agenda to consider
His request.
Point of order.
It's yeah, because it's
Trustee Ramsey cannot
he's
do that
talking.
because he was on the.
Just a minute, Trustee Petrovic. So just 1 second. Right, so I get that you're trying to add something to the agenda, which requires the 2/3 vote. But what you're requesting to add to the agenda is a request for reconsideration, which needs to be done by somebody on the prevailing side of the vote.
Point of order.
That's okay. Just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. So your preamble said that we as a board could add a request. We're not actually moving a reconsideration. We're asking that we discuss the reconsideration process. We know that we have a lot of trustees here who don't understand reconsideration. So we're asked.
Okay, hold on a second. Trustee Woodcock.
My apologies, Madam Chair, but I think that's
There's no assumptions about what people can understand or not understand at the table, so let's not make any assumptions tonight. So we'll withdraw that.
Discussion.
So what you're requesting is a discussion about reconsideration.
Yeah.
Without discussing this specific reconsideration, is that what you're saying to me?
So,
Trustee Ramsey?
okay, Madam Chair, that's from the body of the water. Just trying to clarify here. I think these are two separate issues. So asking for it to be placed on the agenda, I recognize, this is the request from the delegation. We are allowed to ask that the request be considered at the meeting. So that's one vote. Once we get into that, Madam Chair, it's obvious what the rules would be with respect to reconsideration. It's up to someone from the prevailing side to take that off the floor once we put it on the agenda. That's what I would respectfully suggest, that why this motion is in order, and then we deal with the other after if it's placed on the agenda. I think it's just a proper courtesy.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, according to 25.1.1A of the so 24.5 of our bylaws says reconsideration of a motion previously approved by the board. Once a motion has been decided on at a board at a regular or special board meeting and confirmed by a resolution of the board recorded in its minutes, it shall not be reconsidered during the ensuing 12 months unless A, at least 72 hours written notice has been given to all members of the board, and then it talks about the motion to reconsider is made by a trustee who voted with the prevailing side, whether it was for or against, and the affirmative vote of 2/3 of all trustees of the board present at the meeting is received to reopen the matter. So we have not, A has not been satisfied by this because there's not 72 hours written notice. So,
Madam Chair, if I might.
okay.
I think this.
Last point here, Trustee Ramsey.
Okay, Madam Chair, as I mentioned, we are dealing with two separate issues. This is simply a request under the rules to have what the delegation spoke about to place it on the agenda. Once it is placed on the agenda, I will respectfully suggest that it is up to the board then to, if someone from the prevailing side wishes to move, I'm not sure, I won't impugn anything here as to whether or not someone's going to do it, but someone from the prevailing side, if they were to then provide or to move a motion that we reconsider, I think that's when we could appropriately deal with it. But I think we need to deal with this issue first as to placing this item on the agenda. This is not about reconsideration, it's about the delegate's request. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, but the delegate's request is the reconsideration. And so to put something on the agenda when the delegate's request is specifically about reconsideration, you're asking for a reconsideration to go on the agenda, and we haven't satisfied the 72 hours written notice.
Point of order.
Does that,
Point of order.
I'm gonna,
Thank you.
point of order, Trustee Watson?
So if someone on the prevailing side decided they wanted to entertain a reconsideration, we would move a motion to suspend the rules. So Robert's rules isn't there so we can bind the board. It's supposed to actually be used to help us make decisions and reconsider. So we could suspend the rules.
But right now we're following our bylaws, and that's what I'm reading right now. So your point of order, I acknowledged it, but I'm not going to rule on it right now. Trustee Woodcock?
Madam Chair, I'm asking for clarification.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, I think what Trustee Ramsey is asking is that under our delegation procedures, that the current delegates presentation be added to the agenda and leave it at that for now. And regardless of what the content of the delegation is.
That's not my understanding of what trustee Ramsey has asked.
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding.
I thank my colleague for that clarification. It's very helpful.
One moment.
Discussion.
On the agenda.
Sorry, trustee Ramsey? You,
I accept that clarification, Madam Chairperson, from my colleague. That was the basic intent.
so the intent was to put the whole delegation on the agenda,
Correct.
not that specific item.
Correct.
All
Yes.
of it.
Okay. Okay. So Ms. Rydell has just clarified that the reason the delegates are speaking tonight at the board meeting is because it is already on the agenda through the ad hoc committee's report. So all of them are speaking on the trustee vacancies, which is in the ad hoc report. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Fair enough, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions of clarification? Trustee Paczewski?
Yes, through you to the delegation. You have referred to the proposed process for replacing trustees as secretive, but you've also said that you read about the proposed process on our website. So I'm just wondering how a secretive process could be posted on the website for everyone to read.
Mr. Petrovic?
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Trustee Paczewski, please.
Trustee
Thank you.
Pajkowski. That's an interesting question. So the process is secretive, but it's posted that, yes, it is posted, but it's basically saying that we're having a secret process and we've let the public know that we're going to have a secret process. That's essentially what's happening. Nobody knows what happens with the applications after they're received. I know you look confused. That's okay.
Follow up, trustee Paczewski?
The process will unfold in public at a public meeting.
So all the applications will be received and reviewed in a public meeting. There'll be 100 people in this room. Is that what you're telling me?
Okay,
Not
So-
100 people, but
we're not going to get into a debate here with the delegates, so this will be discussed later in the meeting. Okay? Just looking for anyone else first, because before you go to you, trustee Ramsey, okay, for the second time?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the delegation. Just asking him to clarify in view of the question generated from my colleague. If you could just elaborate with respect to, if you could be a little bit more specific as to what secret process are you speaking of? Are you speaking of what was identified in terms of the voting that trustees would be doing in private? Could you clarify? I'm not sure if I fully understand.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Petrovic?
Thank you, trustee Ramsey. So it's a secret ballot process to determine who fills those vacancies. So the trustees themselves, all of you here have been elected democratically, but then you're selecting somebody, two trustees, and yet we don't even know who has voted for who. And those applications are there's no opportunity to inform the public of what the trustee stands for, what they're about, what they're looking to represent. It's a very secretive, that portion of it is very secretive.
So just to follow up then, Madam Chair.
Quickly?
Thank you for that clarification. So basically then are you asking for more transparency from the board then? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Through you to
Mr.
Trustee
Petrovic.
Ramsey, getting the hang of this finally. What I'm asking for is just a total simplification of it and taking the next eligible candidate from the most recent election, that was just a few months ago, and if they're still eligible, appointing them.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Watson?
Thank you through you to the delegate. So when you talk about the secrecy part, are you talking about the full submission and then they'll be completed where it'll only be 10 chosen from those by trustees and the ranking? Is that what you're referring to?
Through you to
Ms.
Trustee
Petrovic.
Watson. Yeah, it's so as I understand it, there's going to be ads taken out in local newspapers to any Waterloo Region resident to submit an application. So it could be somebody that, well, it most likely will be people that didn't run before in the most recent election. And the entire process of the questions that they're posed by this current the current board, like the public isn't privy to that. It's not like you're going out door knocking, campaigning, and putting all that effort, time, money, resources into running a campaign and letting democracy work its messy magic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Petrovic.
Thank you.